Let's begin with our class. So yesterday I was discussing about pandas and everything. So before going into pandas, so what we'll be trying to do is today I'll be discussing functions with you guys, and by tomorrow itself we will be completing the entire Python. So today we'll be completing the functions. We'll be discussing about lambda functions and functions with parameters and functions without parameters and etc. So yeah. So what are functions? So functions are already developed snippets which we use in our code so as to reduce the complexity. So let's say I have given a variable named var and I send a value of 5. So if I wanted to know the type of data, the data type of that variable, so I am using this function called as type of var. So how the type function like says this is integer data type, or if I give a decimal value here, so it says it is a float data type. So how it is doing and what's running behind the scenes, we are actually unaware of it. But what we are trying to do is we are just importing, or we are just using this function type here. So that is the use of function. So those functions are also can be defined as these snippets which we could use in our code. There is no need that you should be knowing how it is coded and everything. You can just use it in your program. So let's define a function. So we will not be discussing about these type of functions. Like the different types of functions include type, max, print, minimum, round, etc. Those are all examples of functions. So let's define a function without parameters. So every function should be defined by this thing. So whenever you write def, and this is the name which you give to your function, and a function is always written in this small parenthesis. So this is the name of the function which I have wanted to give. So I am trying to print a square of a value. So a function is always defined by def, and you should be giving this colon, like whenever you give a function or whenever you give a condition, so it should be ended in colons. So whenever you put a colon, you would be given an indentation here. So that means you are defining a function or a condition. So I have declared a function def with a function name of square, and in that function I am writing value equal to 4 power 2. So this double star marks, this is used to represent to raise to the power, like 4 power 2. This is what that means. So when I try to print that value, it will not get printed. It will be only printed when you call the function. So this is called as calling the function name. So I will be just compiling it without calling. So it's typing. See there, you're not getting any output here. So what happens is the everything you have written here in the program is true, but you will get the result only when you call. See here, you are calling type function. So likewise, you should be calling square, and only when you call it, so you would be getting the result. So whenever you call the square, what it does is it goes to the function, it goes through all these whatever conditions, whatever logics you have written, and then it tries to print that value. So this is defining a function without a parameter. So with parameters means this is default value which I have given here, right? So I want to replace this with some variable so that I can change the value every time without actually changing here. So what I have done here is, so I have, this is void here, means I haven't given any parameters. So I have defined a function here, and I have given a value called as val. So in the formula, in the logic which I have written here, I have given it val power 2. So that means instead of giving 4 directly here, I will give whatever, I will call whatever number I want. So this could be 5, this could be 10 or anything. So what it does is when I'm calling square of 5, it goes here and it will be writing here, it would be taking the value of 5 here and it would be putting the 5 here in the logic, the code logic. And what it will try to do is it would take 5 power 2 and it will store that value 25 in this variable value, and it again tries to print it here. So I can replace it by 8, and if I try to compile it again, so it gives me 64. So what you're trying to do is you are giving a parameter here. So instead of changing the code every time, going into the code looking, so in real life situations this code will be actually so much big. Like whenever you change, whenever you want to put any value, so you should be changing that value in every place. So instead of doing that, if you keep a standard format, standard variable, so if you change it there, it is enough. You need not go through the entire code to change that value. So if I give here 10, so what it will try to do is it will take the value of 10 here and it will put the 10 in this logic, and it will calculate the value. It will be getting the output as 100. So 100 is stored in this variable value, and when you are trying to print it, it will be returning the output as 100. And next is using the return type. So instead of writing print, so what you will try to do is you will write return there. So I will say, since we are directly giving the print statement here, so what it tries to do is it directly prints the output. But unlike when you use return value, you should mention where your result should be stored, like in which variable you want the result to be stored. Like if I just call square of 10, it will not work. So what I'll try to do is the entire part is same. So what I have told you here, I am replacing the print statement with the return statement. So that's it. So what I will try to do is instead of calling only this one, so I will write something like my output should be stored in this squared value. So what happens is when you give 10 here, it will return the value, and that returned value will be stored in the squared value. Since I am calling it using the squared value, I am calling the entire function square of 10 using the squared value. So when I try to print it, it will be result giving me this output. So we can try it like, so that is the main function of return type. There is nothing to be confused. When you are printing it here directly, so it will print the output. But here, unlike when you use a return statement, you should be calling you should be calling another variable so as to store your result, because the return itself will not return any value. So I'll try to compile it for you. It will be not returning anything. So what you should be trying to do is you should write something like your result, like this, squared value equal to, you should be calling it, and you should be storing that called value, the function call which you are giving into another variable, and you can print that variable. So that is the only thing you can do with functions here. So I'll reverse a bit for you again. You are just defining a function here. If you write void or if you don't write anything, it is not any error. So you are defining a function, you are giving a value here, and you are printing it, and you should be calling your function again, then only it will print the result. But instead of giving value here in the code, what we will try to do is we will be replacing it with a generalized variable, so that we will use the same format in the entire code. And when you give that value here, so what it will try to do is it will go into that code, it will be checking wherever that value is there, and it will be printing that value. So if you wanted to use return type instead of print, so what you will do is you will return the value, and you will be storing that variable into, you will be storing that output into this variable, and again you will be calling it, and in that way you would be getting the result. So there is this thing called as doc strings. So just like how we use comments here by using a asterisk symbol, in the same way when you use these three double quotes, it is sort of a commenting thing you can do in functions. So either this or this, both of them are the same. Next would be multiple parameters. So multiple parameters is in this sense. So I wanted to give two variables and wanted to raise each of them to the powers. So what I will try to do is I will define a function which is, I named it raised to power, and I have given parameters val1 and val2. So my output should be val1 to the power of val2. So this is the logic which I have put here, and I want to return the output. And when I have used this return statement, so what I will try to do is I will call this entire function call to another variable called as result, and I will give the parameters here like what numbers I want, and I will try to print the result. So in that sense it would be giving you the result. So I will do something like 4 comma 2, and it should yield me with 16. So first what you should be trying to do is you should be getting a few basic understanding of how it works with parameters, and once you are done with single parameters, then you can jump onto multiple parameters. So did you guys understand till this part, till the multiple parameters thing? Don't try to get it as much as complicated. So there is only this thing. Even in C or C++, you will be finding it opening the curly braces, void, add, void, power, and everything like that. But here it is so simple. You will be giving a definition. You will be defining a function, and you would be giving it a name. So if you want to give the parameters, you would be giving, but what you should be trying to do is you should be understanding before that what type of logic you want to develop. So let's say I wanted to raise to power, right? So when I wanted to raise a number to a power, so then it should be having two variables. So I have two variables, and this is the logic I have kept. So I have put those two values as my parameters here, and I have developed a logic, and I have returned the output. So whatever you do, if you use a return statement, you have to call it into another variable so as to print your result. So if I write something like print output, then there is no need for me call this entire thing here. And there is no need for me to write this also. So it just works. So this is how you do. Okay. So and the next thing would be tuples. So I have told you tuples are immutable. Tuples are used for fixed values. So real life example of a tuple would be origin, which is 0 comma 0. So whichever graph paper you take, whatever you do, the 0 comma 0 as an origin would not change. So that is the main thing of tuple. And yeah, so tuples can be defined in such way. So let's give a variable even numbers, and let's write them in tuple. And when I give some random thing called ABC to these even numbers, so it would be assigned correspondingly. So A would be assigned to 2, B would be assigned to 4, C would be assigned to 6. And when I try to print ABC, so you would get these corresponding values. So like how this is mainly used in vector planes and everything, which we will not be doing. That will be done by the hardcore machine learning engineers. They would be mainly rather depending on the tuples and its operations. So for us, there is no need to understand anything about much about tuples, but this would be doing it. Like this is what they will do. They would be giving a tuple, and they would be this will be xyz for them. because they will be working mostly on planes. They would be developing 3D models and all. But for us as a data scientist, we would be only developing 2D models and 2D inferences. And yeah, so we can use these tuples and in such a manner. So I have defined another function which is called raise to the power, and I have given val1 and val2. So the new value which I would want as my output will be val1 power val2, and val2 power val1 will be new value 2. So what I have tried to do here is I have given a tuple. So the small brackets, a tuple is always given in these small brackets here, these brackets. So I have given new val here and new val2 here, and I have written the new tuple. So since I have used this return statement here, so what I should be doing is I should be giving this whole value. I should be calling that whole value into another variable, and in doing so I printed the result. So 3 power 4, because new val 1 is, this one is 3 and this one is 4, right? So 3 power 4 and 4 power 3. So 3 power 4 value will be stored here and 4 power 3 value will be stored here. So when you try to print the result, so 3 power 4 is 81 and 4 power 3 is 64. So once when you understand these basic things, this how do you operate with single parameters and how do you operate with return type. So once when you get to know those both things, then all of this becomes as simple as that. You would not be feeling any difficulty in doing these all things. And the next would be global variables and local variables. So global variable is so something which you define out of, like, not in a function, you would be defining it outside. You would be declaring the variable, the values outside the function. So this is my function, right? So I am not declaring it inside the function snippet, so I am declaring outside. So that is called as global variable, while as a local variable is I am defining here. So if you remember in our previous example, we have written it val and we have given here val. So instead of doing it, I have given here inside the function the value 4. So this is called as the local variable. Okay, or you can do something like I can give nothing here and I give v1 equal to 4 and I can write v1 here. So even this will do because I am defining the local variable inside a function. So then it is called as the local variable. And the next part would be adding default arguments. So what default arguments means is that let's understand it with an example. So I wanted to raise again for the power. So I'm defining a function. I'm calling my function as some power, and this would be my input value, like this is the number I wanted to get power. So this is the number and this is the default value. So you will understand what default value means. So here this is the code because I wanted a number and a number should have its power. This should be the number, like it can be 2, 3 or 4. So I have, this is the logic which I have developed and I have used it by printing the return statement. So now what I will try to do is, so val equal to, so it went like this, right? So what I'll try to do is I will remove the 2 and I will just give it like it. So it hadn't given me any powered value. It gave me just 3. Why? Because if you don't mention any value here, like since I haven't mentioned 2 or 3 or 4 or something like that, what it tried to do is it took the default value as 1. So this is called as a default parameter which you could use in your argument. Okay, so if I give some 3 here, so it prints me 27. But if I don't give anything, it would be taking the default value as 1 because I have given it pow equal to 1. So that is one of a example you can know. This is called as a default argument. Means if you don't want, or if the user haven't given you any choice, so you can put this default value here and it would yield the same result for every value where you haven't given anything. So 3 power 6, it would give me 729. But if I don't give the 6 value, so it will take the pow equal to 1 as the default thing. So that is one thing. And what I would like you guys to do is there is another thing called as the flexible arguments. So this is default arguments, and the next thing would be flexible arguments. In that flexible arguments you would be having args and quarks. So what I would like you guys to do is I would like you people to do a basic research on these both things, and in the next class you could possibly tell me, or you could either WhatsApp me that what you have understood by it. I would give you a hint. The star mark means select all. So that means uh, let's give a word. No, I will be explaining it to the data part. So star equal to means star means it means to select all. Means for example, if I have given star args this argument here, so it means whenever you use some string or anything like that, it means to take the entire values into consideration. So I want you guys to know about star args and star quarks, and DM me and drop me a message in WhatsApp or email and let me know what you have actually known about it. So that would be for your assignment. And the next thing would be lambda functions. So instead of using this def and everything, there is another property you can use which is called as a lambda function. So it would be a single line command as always. So let's say I want my function to be called as power. So I will define only two variables, and that could be done by lambda x comma y. And for a function you would be using this colon notation as always. And next you would be putting your code. So this is a single line command. It would be very easy. I always use lambda functions most of the time, because when you are getting proficient you should be able to look more skillful. So a single line code is always acceptable in IT firms and all. So this is the function name I wanted to call, and this is the lambda. So lambda followed by defining those two variables, and next followed by its logic. So that's it. It is a single line code. Instead of going from here to here like this, it would be done in a simple way. The function name you want to give, which is followed by the function declaration and the code logic. So this is how you define a lambda function. You can either do something like just a minute. If you want to do addition, so that could be, I want my function to be called as add, and then I would write lambda, and then I would declare two variables. Function should be ending in colons, then a plus b, and then in the next part I'll do add 2 comma 5, and I'll just write. So it is as simple as that. Okay, so a lambda function, if you are using it thoroughly, so you would people who are writing lambda functions are thought to be more skillful in data science. So most of them, they always use data science. But even though if you write something wrong in it, it is easy for you to just check it out soon. But if you do it here, because you are using so many variables here, you will get pretty much confused. So this is how you do a lambda function. The next is mapping. So the mapping also is necessary. So I have given a list called as nums, and I have given the elements as 2, 3, 4, 5. So maps, the function map always takes two parameters. One is the function and the another is the sequence. So sequence could be dictionary, list, or a tuple, and the function would be this, the lambda function. So what I have did here is I have given square all and I have used the map function. So in the map function, the first parameter is what? The function, right? So I have given my function here. And the next is the sequence. So the sequence could be num, because I have given a list of values called nums here. So it could be a list, it could be a dictionary, it could be a tuple. So when I try to print list of square all, what it tries to do is it maps individually to every element in the list, and what it does is it takes this 2, it puts it here, it multiplies it, and it would print the list here again. 4, it would take 3, it would, because we have used map, it would take this 3, it would map this into this function, and it prints the square, 3 square, and it prints 9. The next would be 4, it would be mapping here, 4 square, 16. 5, it would be mapping into the function 5 square and 25. So this is how this basic mapping works. And the next would be iterators. So let's say I have a list of employees with these names. So when I want to print those every name of the employee, so I will write, if you have attended my last class, you would be knowing how I used for statements to print the elements in a list. So I have printed like for employee in employees. So I wanted to print each employee. So it has printed me all the elements which are present in this list. So the same is with this here. For letter in this is a guy's name in the class. So for letter in Shailesh Kumar, so print letter. So what it tries to do is it iterates through each of the letters, individual words, and then it prints here. So this is how it goes. And let's say if you want to print in a certain range, so for I in range of 10, print I. So the default part will always start from index, not from index, from 0, right? So it prints from 0 to 9. So if I wanted to print it from 2, I'd be writing something like 2 comma 10, and it prints me from 2 to 9. So this is how it goes. And the next would be iterating over iterables. So let's say I have given a word Spider-Man. So I would like to print word by word. Like I would want to iterate means going, like it is like a loop which you are doing again and again. So let's say I have given a word Spider-Man, and what I'm trying to do is, you just don't see it here, I want to iterate each word again and again. So I have used iter, and I wanted to iter this word. So I am taking it for my sake of convenience to it. So when I see the example of iterable is next, right? So what I will try to do is next of it. Next of it. Just a minute. Equal to iterable. Yeah. So what it tries to do is, when I have used this iterable, what it tries to do is it iterates individually through each and every letter which we have given here. So if I do next of it here, so it goes to the next part, and if again I use it here, again it goes through I, and again if I use it here, what it's trying to do is it's iterating through the word again and again. So it goes like this. So instead of this whole crap, let's say I want to print this thing. So I have told you this, right? This star means select all. So when you go into SQL or something like that, you would be using like select star from table. We would be using these type of queries there. So select star means you want to select everything which is there. So select everything which is there. So here, since I have done next of it, we'll remove this for convenience. So what this is trying to do is it's printing one by one letter. So instead of that much of time taking, I wanted to print everything at a time. For that sake of convenience, I have used this star symbol, which means select everything what is there. So and I have compiled it, so it prints me the entire word like this. And the next would be zip function. So in zip function, let's say we have given two lists. One is this Avengers list, and the other one is names, the names of those corresponding Avengers. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to club them both together, like join them both together and print the list. So that could be achieved by using this zip function. So the corresponding indices, like Barton in the names list, Barton is at index 0, Stark is at index 1, whereas in the Avengers list, Hawkeye is at index 0, Iron Man is at index 1. So the same index will be get collabed, like they would be joined together by using the zip function. So when you try to print it, so you would be getting Hawkeye for Barton, Iron Man for Stark, Thor for Odinson, and Quicksilver for Maximoff. So that is one important task you can do. But what you should be remembering is you should be using this list of, in order to get both of these as a list here, you should be using list of Z. The same is with mapping function also. So you wanted to get the result in a list format, right? Since you are using a list here, so you should be using list of square all. So you should be remembering, while you are using a mapping function and a zip function, the resulting output should be in a list format. So a list of square all would give you a list as an output. So the same could be done by using the for loop as well. For that I would be taking like for z1 comma z2 in zip Avengers comma names. I am zipping this Avengers, I have taken this whole here like this. And for loop I have been, since I am giving a condition, it should be ending in a colon, so that leaves me with an indentation. So I'm printing z1 plus z2, so I'm not printing any list here. So what it does here is it just prints me here correspondingly Hawkeye for Barton, Iron Man Stark, Thor Odinson, and Quicksilver Maximoff. So that is how you use a zip function in for loop. And if you don't want to use any for loop, this will be the standard way which you can use. So did you guys understand it? That's all for today's class. Like I have a personal work to do, so I should be going outside. So yeah, do you have any doubts? And by tomorrow we'll be finishing it, the Python part. And what I'll try to do is I'll make a complete Python tutorial video which could last from like 2 hours at max. And once when you refer through it, you'll be cleared with most of the doubts. And what you can actually do is you guys can also apply for certain Python developer jobs. Like if you have enough practice in Python, you can apply for Python developer jobs, or you can, like, if you are like communicable and interactive with others, so you can also do something like a teaching job in Python. So there are ample number of opportunities for Python tutors outside, so you can try that as well. So sequence in map. Okay, so sequence is nothing but, where is the sequence? Yeah, so a map function always takes two arguments. Okay, so the first part will be the function and the next part will be the sequence. So this sequence, it could be a tuple, it could be a list, it could be a dictionary. But what I have given here is a list of values, right? So I have given a list called as nums, and I have given the elements as 2, 3, 4, 5. So what I have tried to do is I have taken this value as square all, and in that I have used this map function. So here what I have said is map function will take two arguments, right? One is a function and one is a sequence. So if you are much dependent on this, so it would be pretty difficult for you to write this entire code here in here, so it would be pretty much difficult. So that's why we are using lambda functions. So lambda functions can be done by, like, whatever the function name you want to give, you will give it here, and you would use lambda where you declare the two variables. And since a function should always end in a colon, so you would be putting a colon, and then you will be defining your function logic. So it is a single line function definition, which is called as a lambda function. So here I have given a lambda function, and the next part is the sequence. So what sequence I wanted to do is, I wanted to use this list. So this is the nums which I have given here in the sequence for this sequence, and this is for the list, not the list, this is for the function, lambda function. So what happened here is, it takes the the two value here, and what it tries to do is, it maps into here. Since we are using a map function, it maps the two into this logic, and it stores the value as 4, and it goes to the next element, and it prints the square of that value, which is 9, and the next 16, and the next 25, and it stores those values. And what we are trying, it stores all those values in this square all. Okay, and once it has all those values, we are trying to print a list. We are trying to print all those values which are stored in the square all in this list of square all. So it returns a list. If I don't write here anything, it would give me the address, but it will not give me the, sorry, it would just give me the address, that the values are present at this address, but it will not give me any values. So for getting the values, what I should be writing is, I would write something like square all. So it prints all those values which are squared by using this function, and it returns them all in a list like this. So 4, 9, 16, 25. The same is with the zip function also, but what zip tries to do is, it clubs two lists and returns them as a single one. So if you want to do it in for, so you can do it like this. If you don't want to use for loop, you can do it like this. Yeah, lambda is used for single line code. You don't want to, like, most of the proficient programmers, they don't write this much of a code, so they will write it in one line. So it all depends on the proficiency. Like, I am better than you, so they want, people always want this competency, right? So for that sake of thing, most of the people always prefer to use lambda functions. But as a beginner, what you try to do is, you learn this type. So once you are fluent with this thing, like, even the lambda function is much easier than this thing. So since it is a convention for us to start from 0 to 100, like from basic to high, so I suggest you know first about how you are using single value parameters and multiple parameters, and then go into this lambda functions. So lambda function is nothing but making the functions look simple. Yeah, that's true. For your assignment, I want you guys to know about args and quargs, and I would be happy if you drop me a message of what you have understood from these two parameters. How to get our output in a single line while using for loop. Print I end. So this works, right? I don't know. This parameter. Yeah, there you go.